Good morning, everybody. It's Thursday morning. Can I say a very, very warm welcome to Penn Vicarage today? Lovely to see you. Hope this finds you cheerful and well. And thank you for joining us as we continue through the incredible book of Proverbs. And I think we'll get straight stuck into it this morning because it's what you want to hear. And we're in chapter 12. So just listen and take these on board. And Proverbs chapter 12, here goes. Whoever loves discipline loves knowledge. But those who hate to be rebuked are stupid. The good obtain favour from the Lord, but those who devise evil he condemns. No one finds security by wickedness, but the root of the righteous will never be moved. A good wife is the crown of her husband, but she who brings shame is like rottenness in his bones. The thoughts of the righteous are just, the advice of the wicked is treacherous. The words of the wicked are a deadly ambush, but the speech of the upright delivers them. The wicked are overthrown and are no more, but the house of the righteous will stand. One is commended for good sense, but a perverse mind is despised. Better to be despised and have a servant than to be self-important and lack food. The righteous know the needs of their animals, but the mercy of the wicked is cruel. Those who till their land will have plenty of food, but those who follow worthless pursuits have no sense. The wicked covet the proceeds of wickedness, but the root of the righteous bears fruit. The evil are ensnared by the transgression of their lips, but the righteous escape from trouble. From the fruits of the mouth one is filled with good things, and manual labour has its reward. Fools think their own way is right, but the wise listen to advice. Fools show their anger at once, but the prudent ignore an insult. Whoever speaks the truth gives honest evidence, but a false witness speaks deceitfully. Rash words are like sword thrusts, but the tongue of the wise brings healing. Truthful lips endure forever, but a lying tongue lasts only for a moment. Deceit is in the mind of those who plan evil, but those who counsel peace have joy. No harm happens to the righteous, but the wicked are filled with trouble. Lying lips are an abomination to the Lord, but those who act faithfully are his delight. One who is clever conceals knowledge, but the mind of a fool broadcasts folly. The hand of the diligent will rule, while the lazy will be put to forced labour. Anxiety weighs down the human heart, but a good word cheers it up. The righteous gives good advice to friends, but the way of the wicked leads astray. The lazy do not roast their game, but the diligent obtain precious wealth. In the path of the righteous there is life. In walking its path, there is no death. And this is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Okay, as you see, what you have here again in chapter 12, like lots of other chapters, you have lots of verse by verse, quick fire sort of sayings of wisdom. And because it's like that, it's quite difficult to commentate on it nicely without trawling through every verse by verse, which I'm sure you'd be here all morning, I think, to do that. So I think you've got to really look at it. You could go back and have a look again. But there are some themes which keep coming out of this, sort of common themes, which I think go across kind of the whole thing. The first thing is this, which you get again and again and again in the book of Proverbs, and you see it in verse 1 here, is the importance of being what you might call teachable, of always knowing that they've got something to learn. People who are, sort of arrogant and always think, I know it all, I've been around a long time, I know what I'm doing, no one can teach me anything, the ways of doing it, it's always worked well this way. That is trouble, it really, really is. I think, was it Calvin said 400 years ago, and I'm quoting loosely, he said, I beseech you from the very bowels of my inner being to consider that thou mayest be mistaken, as he puts it rather well. But I think the importance here of being teachable, and especially when you see people coming into ministry and people offer themselves for Christian service, The people who are prepared to learn, who are prepared to grow, they're the people that tend to do best. The people that come along saying, "I've got this skill, I've got that skill, I've got the other skill," that always concerns me somewhat. But when people are teachable, when people are prepared to learn and grow, that's a really, really good sign. And it says here, verse 1, whoever loves discipline loves knowledge. But it puts it alternatively, but those who hate to be rebuked are stupid. So it puts it really rather well here. Again, a constant theme coming through the book of Proverbs again and again and again, the importance of being teachable, of being prepared to learn. Second thing is, in these chapters, you hear comments about things that God loves and things that God hates. And a couple of times in this chapter today, we have things that God loves. And in verse 2 and in verse 10, you have a description of how God loves kindness, how God appreciates kindness. So the good obtain favour from the Lord. And in verse 10, the righteous know the needs of their animals, but the mercy of the wicked is cruel. The importance that God loves kindness. And it's basic stuff, isn't it? Really, sometimes people can be very righteous without being kind, and I think actually God loves kindness. We should act justly, love mercy, and walk humbly with our God, says the book of Micah. And I think this talks about God loves people being kind to one another, and I think that's kind of really, really important. So God loves kindness, and even to animals. You don't see that very often in the Bible, but in verse 10 you've got a kind person loves animals, and God loves that. Then in verse 4 we have the first description of a good wife, and it's quite interesting actually. A good wife is the crown of her husband. The crown is it's a lovely picture here. But as we'll discover here later on in chapter 31, which is a longer description of the good wife, here is not some sort of 1950s stay at home, do as you're told, just get yourself ready for your husband all the time type wife. You'll find that the wife is a picture of strength and worth. She is the crown over his head, and she's not some sort of you get the kind of 1950s kind of stuff. She's actually quite a strong lady. This isn't just sort of pliability. Here, it's a picture here of strength and character as well. Then in verse, another picture which comes on again and again is the importance of the matter of time, and that in the long run, good comes out. Wickedness is always inherently unstable. So in verse 7, you have the wicked are overthrown and are no more, but the house of the righteous will stand. So it will see the test of time. And the other thing is also it's about truthful. Verse 19, truthful lips endure forever, but a lying tongue lasts only for a moment. And so you see here that the importance that the time will tell. Truth will out. Good will win in the end, because in the end, good is life according to the Maker's instructions, whereas evil is not, is inherently unstable, and dishonesty and so on is inherently unstable too. And while it's on there, actually, it talks also about the importance of not speaking too rashly. That's something that comes out as well. I forget which verse it is. When somewhere down sort of 15 to 20, something like that. When somebody insults you, the wise person is somebody who kind of thinks about it first before responding rashly. I think what quite often happen in human conflict is someone says something, then someone responds, and before you know that the importance of being prepared to learn to count to 10 sometimes before one response. Because I think sometimes that can inflame issues. So it talks about the importance of the matter of the righteousness will win in the end, and evil is inherently unstable. But also being prepared to sometimes just count to 10 when someone says something to you without responding too quickly, because of the importance of time as well. Then I talked earlier on about God loving kindness. And in verse 22, you find something else that God hates. In chapter 11, we heard that God hates dishonest measures. And in verse 22, here we find God hates lies. Lying lips are an abomination to the Lord, but those who act faithfully are his delight. So again, it's the importance of straightforward truth and honesty. It's basic stuff, really. The importance of honest dealings, of being straight, of being straight in terms of being straightforward, in terms of being honest in dealing, about dealing, acting correctly and doing what we're saying we're going to do and paying things on time and this type of stuff. The importance of just good, straightforward honesty. So that's mentioned here. So God hates dishonesty. God hates lies, and but God loves on, and just reminding us that in all that we do, personally, in our relationships, in our dealings, in our with our money and everything, the importance of just simple, straightforward honesty and openness. And then finally, in verse 28, we have that good is the path of righteousness, and in walking its path, there is no death. That's the importance actually of living life God's way, living life honestly and correctly, and that is the path to life in all its fullness. So lots in here, and as I say, do look at it again at your leisure. I think there are 32 sermons here in the 32 verses here. Sorry, 28 verses. There are 28 sermons in 28 verses. That could be a very, very long morning. But a few things to pick up: the importance of being teachable in verse 1. In verse 2 and 12, that God loves kindness. In verse 4, we have a good wife, but she's not some sort of pliable, but she's actually strong and good, and she's quite a lady in her own right. In verse 7 and 19, you have the importance of truth will, in time will tell. That honesty will lead to things being long term, whereas dishonesty is inherently unstable. In verse 22, we have the fact that whilst God loves kindness, God hates dishonesty. In verse 28, the fact that living your life God's way and honestly is the path to life in its fullness. Friends, lots there. Do look again. I'm not sure I've described it very well, but have a look again, see what you think. It's a fascinating chapter. Lots of good, straightforward, basic truths here. Proverbs chapter 12. Hope that's helpful. God bless you. Have a lovely day. Thanks so much for watching, and more tomorrow.